You're listening to Remotely We Are One, a podcast to help inspire others to take their lives back from the office commute. I'm Rick, a passionate beer rep who loves the industry but hates the commute.
And I'm Kaleem, a remote work advocate and consultant. We're going to speak with some of the top professionals who have managed to avoid the commute as they share stories from the most inspiring to the most comical, all while working remotely.
Man, this sounds exciting. Let's clock in. Oh, you look fine. Nice to meet you too. We do a lot of back and forth banter here, so don't be offended if we say something foolish off the cuff.
Don't bother me. You will learn quickly I'm not fussed. I was just in San Diego this weekend with some extended family who all live in Southern California, and I was like, "Oh, you're all tan. I'm not. I work indoors."
Yeah. I too have been cursed with that Irish shell. I'm pasty no matter what time of year it is.
Burn quite nicely, just to a nice crisp.
Oh, so do I. I actually glow in the winter. If it snows outside, I just get this bright aura around me. I'm not glowing. I'm just, pasty Irishman. So there you go. Welcome back, everyone, to Remotely We Are One. I am your fair-skinned, smooth as silk voiced Rick Haney, joined by my ever-courteous and complimentary co-host, Kaleem Clarkson. Hey, man.
Casper, I love you, bro. I mean, you're just like the friendly ghost. I mean, I just enjoy getting on these calls with you every week, man. Thanks for taking us down this wonderful journey. I love it.
Well, my presence is haunting.
I've been told. Well done. Well done.
I'm excited for today's episode. I know you are too. We got some stuff to talk about.
Yes, we do. We're just getting these intimidating guests. I mean, you should see our guests right now.
Pins and needles, bro.
Oh, I'm nervous as shit right now. So first off, we're going to start from the beginning. She led organizational design and people operations for this company. You ready? Yeah. Medium.
I've got some stuff on Medium.
Oh, yeah, I do too. So all those people at Medium, thank you for building that platform. But yes, she led organizational design and people operations there.
Oh, great.
This is interesting. I learned this today. She's from the carpet capital of the world. You know where that is, Rick?
I wouldn't even have any idea.
Dalton, Georgia. Horrible accent. I tried. Dalton. It's like a marbles. Dalton, Georgia.
Like the Patrick Swayze movie, Roadhouse. The name is Dalton.
She now lives in Colorado. She loves cats. She was also an organizational development consultant that worked with multiple startups. She is now currently the co-founder of Range, which is a communication tool for today's work environment. Viewers, listeners, please give a warm welcome to Miss Jennifer Dennard.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Dennard.
Got it. You got it right.
If you guys could only see what my paper looks like.
Covered in chicken scratch, exclamation points, underlines.
I didn't know it was a video recording. You're still learning my name. We're good. We're all friends here.
I guess we're even.
For all you listeners, she was like, "We're not going to have video on this, right?" And we said, "Hell yeah, we are."
Yeah.
So she's doing this recording in her bathrobe, but it's not a problem. It's a nice bathrobe, right, Rick? It's a well done bathrobe.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Pandemic casual then, so we're good.
Not a big deal. I don't think Kaleem's wearing pants either, but we're not going to talk about that.
I'm wearing shorts, of course.
Okay, then I was right. Jen, thanks so much for joining us. We're glad to have you. Tell us a little bit about your background and, I guess, how you discovered, not only went into a remote career, but, what was it that made you discover this is what you wanted, and what was the spark that led to your position today?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because it kind of go back to a few few different work experiences for me. Like many women in the workplace, I've experienced things I don't particularly enjoy in terms of either implicit bias or outright, borderline harassment, things like that. And I think I realized after experiencing that at kind of variety of companies that I cared a lot about company culture and kind of how people experience work day to day. And I think in particular, while working at Medium, they had a lot of effort and work put into how the company operated and how teams were structured. And they previously operated under holacracy, if you're familiar with that slightly cultish operating way of working. Zappos is kind of the biggest name known for that. But that started getting me really interested, along with my co-founder, in how you change how companies operate from the bottom up through thinking about how teams work. And what we saw was that there were several overlapping trends in the workplace, one of which was increasing remote work. One was millennials like myself wanting different things from the workplace than others. And a lot of the problems that big companies face, we saw starting at the team level. And for me personally, I saw a big waste of like the human experience. Like we spend hours and hours at work. And if that experience is uncomfortable or is isolating, like all of these like negative experiences, then that means like a big chunk of your life kind of sucks. And what I saw is that we have the opportunity to change that. And I considered going into more kind of like one-on-one coaching, things like that. But software, and through what Range does, just has such a potential for scaled impact and the ability to change lots of people experience, even by a small percentage. And so growing up in the carpet capital world, I cared a lot about the experience at work and what people were experiencing. And we don't yet serve that market, but
what do you mean carpets? You don't serve the carpet
we don't
market?
serve carpets yet. We're still predominantly in knowledge work, which is, some of what employees at carpet companies do, but we don't yet serve kind of people on the factory floor. It's my pipe dream one day, but less applicable for remote work.
Interesting. I need to rewind because I actually had to Google this. I'm embarrassed that I didn't know this. I guess I did, but I just needed a little refresher. Can you talk about the idea of holacracy? And first, can you let our viewers and listeners know what that is? And
Yeah.
what were some of the challenges that you noticed? Because I kind of feel like, as I just Googled here, which is I love doing this, Zappos is kind of like, stepped back from that type of organization. I'm assuming that the Amazon influence probably had a part to do with that, but could you talk about that some and some of the challenges with it?
So to put it pretty simply, so any company that you work with, there are certain kind of like rules about how you all work together, whether it's OKRs if you're at Google, or how you run your meetings if you're at a smaller company, things like that. And so holacracy is a set of rules that a maybe nonprofit, maybe for-profit company put together of like, here's how to run some companies. And we actually transitioned off it while I was there at Medium. I was help kind of lead that transition. And what you can think about is the underlying values of holacracy are extremely powerful. So things around empowering teams, building transparency, helping ensure everyone is supported, rotating who does kind of grunt work, things like that. And it's actually a precursor to many of the things that are necessitated by remote work. Like if your team doesn't have information and isn't empowered, it's actually really hard to be effective during remote work because people are working different hours, can't operate without pinging a manager to get help. And so in some ways, holacracy was kind of at the forefront of educating people about these different ways of working. And so the challenges specifically with holacracy really relate to it feeling like a whole new way of working. And so the language terms and sometimes feeling a little bit like it's novelty for novelty's sake instead of it really having a purpose. So instead of a team, it was called a circle. And yes, there's some reasoning behind that of like everyone's at the same level, but also it was just a little intimidating for any new hire to join and be like, I've got to learn a whole new vocabulary. And what we do in terms of how we operate Range and some of the philosophy that we build into our product to help empower remote teams is really built on some of the same values, but it's very different in terms of its implementation.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it's very similar to like the Spotify using squads back in the day, right? What was that one called? I can't remember.
It's kind of called the Spotify model. I mean, it's built very similar to some of the, like Agile is built on specific rules of working for development teams, and Range really supports Agile well. What we see is kind of like there's no one framework to rule them all. And it's more about learning and educating oneself on principles, and then you could apply those to different companies, because also different things work at different places depending on the people and the business itself.
Tell me a little bit about, because as a Medium user, I don't know anything about what goes on behind the scenes. You know, I submit something and off it goes and there it stays. What was the culture like? I don't want to put you on the spot there, but
yes, put her on the spot. Yes, we need names. We need names,
Medium,
phone numbers, and emails. Who did you hate? Who did you hate?
It's been several years since I worked there. I think the thing actually I remember most strongly, which is something that we have several ex-Medium folks at Range, and something we've carried forward, is earnestness. So the people internally at Medium, at least when I was there, and I assume it's still true today, care very deeply about publishing and writing. And so that comes through in both the product as well as internally. People wrote a lot. Actually, one of the things that inspired us to think about starting Range was this culture of writing and documentation that existed within Medium. And so today, you know, at our team, we are earnest about different things, earnest about teamwork and helping folks to improve their day-to-day work experience. But I think that was very similar at Medium, just about the space that they were in terms of writing and publishing and sharing good content.
So writing has always been at the center of the whole operation. Like that's.
Yeah, I think so. And for remote work in general, right? If you want to empower asynchronous communication and you want to empower work across time zones, things have to be documented in some way. And certainly companies like Loom or others are pushing the envelope on what video and audio are capable of. But what's still really hard is to search that, like to be like, cool, what did that person say about this? What decision was made? And so really documentation in a written form is invaluable for remote teams. And it's something we're actually starting to think about in our hiring process, is like, cool, can you write your thoughts down? Because if you don't, it's actually much harder to work together. And part of our meeting tool one of the features within our communication tool set is around meeting facilitation and documenting meeting agendas. And really the power there is also on documenting effective meeting notes, so that someone who starts their day after your day ended has a sense for what was decided and what was discussed, without needing to ping or reach out to someone to get that information.
Wow. So in your opinion, in your experience rather, would you say that now more than ever it's more important now to have critical writing skills than ever before?
Yeah, and I might actually level that up to communication skills more broadly. I think what we've seen in the market and with companies that we work with, you know, from Twitter to New Relic to kind of all sorts of tech companies, we've seen that the pains that people have experienced for a long time prior to the pandemic. So things like you're on different floors at your business, or you're in different buildings where you felt like you didn't know your team as well, or you didn't have a voice in the company decisions. Like a lot of these communication pains are now increasingly painful during remote work. So people feel like they, you know, are disconnected from their team. They aren't sure about getting promoted, all of those types of things. And so intentional and skilled communication has really become a priority, I think, for a lot of teams, particularly for leaders. And that's part of what Range does, is we make it really easy for teams to communicate well, because sometimes setting up docs and using templates and things like that is just a lot of work for managers and leaders. And so Range really puts in that kind of infrastructure to help you write good status updates, write good meeting notes, things like that. But that communication skill, particularly in writing, but kind of more broadly, I think has really become more important during remote work.
What I love about Range, I love so many things about it. I think your branding looks awesome, nice and clean. Love that shit.
I can take zero credit for that, but I like it.
I do too. Yes. Good job, whoever you are out there making it happen. Well done. What I like about your product is that you talk about work as just future environments or today's work. And you don't really say asynchronous or synchronous. Like your tool helps you with both. It's not
Yeah.
just an asynchronous tool because you recognize that, you need a mixture of those to have a kind of a full circle. Was there a specific moment or a specific pain point that made you go from a consultant? I'm asking this question for my own greed, of course. As a consultant working with organizations, you're working with individuals. What was it that said, you know what, I just want to build software? Because as a former engineer, like that is completely opposite of consulting and being like, that's it, I'm going to build a piece of software. Just it's not normally the progression of how that works. So what was it that made you decide, look, I understand these challenges because I've been consulting, I've been in people ops. Um, what was it specifically that said, I'm going to build this piece of software?
Yeah, so I think from a consulting perspective, what I saw, and this may resonate with you, and I think consultants are somewhat loath to admit, is that our changes are often not very sticky. They stick around
Mm,
for like 6 to 8 months, and then the company's back to working how they were working, or something has shifted and they have
correct.
to change again. And
Yep.
so, what I think I found frustrating there is like we were putting in all these like human hours
Yes.
and people who were genuinely at their companies trying to change, and it was really hard for them. And so they were coming up with all these kind of like cobbled together systems. And so what we saw was that a role for software is really kind of like architecture, where it helps keep people on track. And so I can't really claim credit for viewing software with that kind of creativity. That's more of my co-founder Dan. He's a software engineer by training. He led engineering at Medium. He spent many years at Google. His code may still be there on Gmail. We don't know. But what he introduced me to is something called the pathetic dot theory, which you may not be familiar with. It's from Lawrence Lessig. And sadly, we as humans are the pathetic dots. And we are influenced by 4 different forces. I believe it's religion, laws, norms, and the market, I think. And the idea, based on the theory and research, is that you need at least 2. So, kind of a canonical example is they outlawed drinking and driving. Nothing changed, stayed for a while, but then campaigns by like MAD, Mothers Against Drunk
Yeah.
Driving,
Yeah.
made it socially unacceptable. And those 2 things together actually reduced the amount of drunk driving that's happening. And
Probably
so
seatbelt too, right? Seatbelt too. Yeah.
And so with consulting, I often think about it as it's just one of the forces. You actually need something else to help reinforce it because you're educating and you're training people and updating their norms. And so then when you think about software, it's a form of that architecture. And it is a way, like just like your hallway forces you to walk through your home in a certain way, like using software also helps you to operate in a certain way. So if our product asks you every day how you're feeling, and has you select an emoji, turns out you're going to think every day, how am I feeling today? And you're going to
Right.
think about how your team is feeling. And it is going to slowly over time change work from just this cold workplace to a place where you think about emotions and you care about whether your teammate's having a bad day, and it influences how you work with them. And so that's what we really saw as the power of software. And I really credit Dan with having that understanding and pushing us in that direction, because that was less of my background. I started to do it some at Medium, but that's really been the journey that we've been on, is combining that education understanding with software as a reinforcing factor.
Shout out, Dan. Shout out, Dan. You just, what's the real theory again so we can rewind it? What's it called?
Pathetic dot.
So, listeners, viewers, you heard 2 great theories today. You're going to hear more. I mean, this is what we do. We try to educate you. So pay attention. Rewind it. It's a really good point. I'm stuck on that theory. Now my mind can't leave it. I need to learn so much about it because
Well,
it's a great name. And yeah, I guess it makes a lot of sense.
I think it explains a lot of remote work trends too. So when we think about, um, remote work, disclaimer, existed before the pandemic,
Right.
but
Oh,
many of
by the
us,
way, when did you start your product? I think that's
uh,
important.
we started in 2017. We were very dogmatic
Exactly.
about remote work. And so, there's some new entrants in the market, and we're like, okay. And they are,
Several.
unsurprisingly, to echo your point earlier, a lot of the new entrants focus on religiously on one side of synchronous or
Yeah.
async communication. And so to actually circle back to more answer the question you'd started with is like, we saw software and trying to bridge that gap is really important because I like talking to people. I don't want to not talk to people. Like you can go back and forth in a comment thread on a Google Doc and you are miscommunicating. And so if you keep doing that in writing, eventually you need to have some sort of live communication. And it's really powerful there. And what we see is companies sometimes really focusing on just meetings as the way to solve organizational issues or just on writing. And neither of those things is effective. We think it's really about blending those two together and ensuring.
Well done. Well done. Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. She did that on purpose.
Exactly. But yeah, it's funny, like the idea of the synthetic dot theory, because when the remote work happened, like one thing changed. Suddenly we were all working remotely, but all our behaviors stayed the same, where it was like, I only know how to meet, I only know how to do this. And so slowly companies like Twitter's How We Work team or Airbnb's investment in this have been not just to make a policy about like how we're going to work, but to actually put in software and processes to help people change how they work day to day. And that's really the key to making, I think, remote work effective.
Do you think that that plays a significant role in a lot of the difficulties that certain managers have with making these transitions? I almost have to wonder, like, what is behind the big push toward forcing people back into the office? And I have to ask, is it because
Yeah.
of their poor management skills, their inability to communicate well, probably
Social
a combination of
norms,
both?
Rick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Social norms, Rick. She's serving it up for us. She's serving it up for us. Social norms, the market, law.
You've done it for like, you've been a leader, let's say, by the time you're at the point where you're making decisions for your company, right, about where to work, you've probably been a leader for like 30 years. And yeah, your leadership style is stopping by someone's desk and being like, how are they doing? And that's also how you check in on how teams are doing and how like you use all of that information to inform your actual like financial forecast and how you're thinking about things. And so when all that information is removed, you kind of feel bereft. You're like, whoa, what am I doing? How do I navigate in this? And so I think what good, effective leaders have done has been to just realize that they needed to learn to hold that growth mindset. And so I don't necessarily think having some people back in the office sometimes is a wrong decision. It really depends on the company and their culture and how they work. But regardless of that, the leaders have to approach it from a growth mindset, which is not, we are going to work the same way we have always worked, and we're just doing that over a computer now, or we're doing it with some people in the office, but rather, how do we make hybrid work enjoyable? How do we have that be something that actually works for people and supports them instead of something that they are forced to do and dragged, tooth and claw back into the office? Like, if that's how it's feeling at your company, like that is, or at one's company, it is reflective of your leadership team having priorities elsewhere. And I think that will come, pardon my French, but come to bite them in the ass at some point. Like it is.
Yes, the first curse. The first curse of the
You got her to
podcast.
swear. She'll never be the same.
She'll never be the same. She's from, her mama can't hear this because she's from Dalton. There's no cursing.
No,
from mama.
no, not in the carpet capital of the world. I do declare. Although
my mother is a very irreverent new age hippie in Georgia. So she would be like,
she's all set. She's all set.
Well, she obviously taught you well. I mean, not only do you cuss, but you use words like bereft and canonical. I heard that one too, and I'm like, whoa, someone's a writer. Someone knows what she's talking about.
I'm gonna have to Google both of those words after this podcast because I don't know what either of those mean. So, thank you for making me feel even more dumb. I appreciate you.
I credit some friends at that.
You know what I was thinking, Rick, as to why these people aren't moving forward, and if you're having these feelings of being forced in an office, it's basically pathetic.
Yeah.
And it's a dot on your character.
Okay.
Nicely done.
It was awful. I tried so hard.
I'm
Even
sitting here
sketch.
going, is he serious with that, or should I laugh? I don't. What's going on here?
We're trying. We're trying. Jennifer's all in here kicking freaking knowledge. It's impressive. Impressive.
Well, luckily for you, I was once told that I laugh at all jokes. Someone was like, she laughs at everything I say, and I don't think it's just me. So, use all your all your puns with me and I'll laugh. So that's good.
Okay. What's a pilot's favorite breakfast food?
Oh, I don't know.
A plain bagel.
That's really bad, but I do kind of
She
like
didn't
it.
laugh, dude. She didn't laugh.
She didn't laugh.
You suck. Get off the stage. Boo.
Boo you. Boo you.
You suck.
That's great. That's great.
Anyway. And now back to the show.
I do have one more question before the big question. So there's a lot of people in this crowded space when we're talking about technologies for remote work, and you have Slack booming, and all of a sudden Salesforce purchases them. Then you have Microsoft trying to do their thing with Teams and all this copying Notion now, right? How are you gonna make it?
The question that keeps me up all night, every night.
Wow.
Sorry to keep you up for a few days.
The place that we see in the market that I just don't see other companies doing is really focusing on the people first, where Range, some of the stuff we do, you could do in a Google Doc. You can write a status update in different places. And like, if you want to put in a lot of work, you can replicate some of what Range does. But what I think is really uncommon and speaks to our values is how we interweave this sense of connection with one another and creating a, historically called team building. I think that doesn't really do it justice. And we've managed to build that in to some of our asynchronous communication in addition to our live meeting tool. And what we found is that attracts a lot of people, there are a lot of people first leaders out there who aren't just about making their meeting efficient, who aren't just about getting status updates from their team. They care about how their team is feeling, and they're spending a lot of time and emotional effort on their own part in order to try to make their experience better. And so that's what Range really helps to facilitate, and what we think the future of work is. It's not just about getting work done, it's about being a person. I don't suddenly arrive at my laptop at 9 a.m. and suddenly stop caring about all these other things that are going on in my life, nor do I stop caring about feeling connected to people. And so I think one of the biggest badges of honor I had recently was we had a new engineer join our team, and he said, "You all are just so emotionally connected." And that is not something I've experienced elsewhere. And I really credit that to our product. We talk about how we feel every day on the product, and in a way that doesn't feel like we're talking about our feelings. I select emoji. It feels like, wait, it doesn't feel like, we're having a very Bay Area session about our feelings or something like that. It feels really part of work. And that is something that I think is possible. And even if your work is unexciting and not something that enthuses you, a lot of times the team experience is what makes you like your job. And so that's what we are really trying to invest in, and is how we differentiate pretty much from everything else on the market.
Great answer. She was prepared for that, Rick. I think she's done a couple pitch decks. My goodness.
It took my breath away on that one.
I mean, she didn't say emotional intelligence, but she's basically like, we combine emotional intelligence with productivity and collaboration. So I think we're all good.
Do you want to be happy or just productive? Because we can do both.
Yeah. I mean, she followed that with some real Wayne Dyer shit. You guys know who Wayne Dyer is?
Yeah.
Dr. Wayne Dyer.
Of course she does.
Of course, I don't even know why I asked, but she basically, that encapsulates everything that he said. We are all interconnected on a wavelength that we can't see. So we're all just energy connecting with one another. And man, does that not translate to a workspace? I mean, you just have to connect with people.
Yeah, and if that's something you do once a month in a happy hour or like every few weeks, it doesn't really feel like connection. Like it has to be something you do on a
No,
basis.
agreed.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we have reached the pinnacle of this episode where you get to tell us a comical or inspiring story that you will never forget while on a Zoom call.
We're working
Yeah.
remotely.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
So there are two experiences that come to mind when thinking about like pivotal ones. One is, so one of the things that a lot of people struggle with, right, is like, how do you give feedback remotely? Like a lot of our ability to connect emotionally is just stronger when we're in person. And so when we're delivering hard news, we often default to being like, I need to be in person. And so one of the things that comes to mind is a conversation I had with a teammate providing critical feedback. And this is a person who's actually going to be transitioning out to a different field. They're trying to become a therapist. And so in some ways, like becoming a, long-time software person is like not their goal. And so I think one of the things that was really powerful there was being able to use kind of all of the techniques from things like crucial conversations and all of that in a live conversation with someone over video and actually be able to connect emotionally and be like, cool, like things aren't going great. Like this work is like not what we expected. Here are the reasons. And to have them come out of that a few weeks later and thank me and say like, wow, you delivered critical feedback to me and I appreciate that you did. And that to me is like the mark of having had a good conversation and built an effective rapport with someone. And so that's like more of like something that I think on fondly. The other Zoom thing I was telling you all a little bit earlier, my husband and I got married over Zoom right at the start of the pandemic in June of 2020.
Congratulations.
We thought it was mid-pandemic. It turns out it was just the beginning. It was something that when I think in reflection was only possible because of Zoom. So we were going to get married and we had a civil ceremony planned and the city of San Francisco shut down due to the COVID-19 pandemic 2 days before our civil ceremony. And we were like, well, we're not going to do that. Like the city is shut, that you can't. And so the city of San Francisco and I think California allowed Zoom weddings for a short period of time. And we had to make the call because we had a big shindig planned later in the year. And we were like, should we do this thing over Zoom? My husband and I are pretty low key anyways. And so we decided to switch to Zoom. And it was everyone's first like Zoom party because it was pretty early on in the like half my team was there because at that point, once you're on Zoom, you can literally invite anyone. Like it doesn't matter how big the attendance is. Right. All of my mother-in-law's friends were invited suddenly and we were like, great, like everyone's included. And it was probably one of the single most like heartwarming things I've done. And the real kicker was that our big shindig that we had planned in August of 2020, the venue burned down in a Cruz Mountain fires in California. So to really like tie the knot on like pandemic and global warming at once, like all of our wedding plans would have not worked had we not gotten married over Zoom. And yeah, it to this day is just a wonderful memory. I certainly wish I could have been in person with certain family members and things like that. But yeah, we like to joke that the internet has saved our relationship because we met on Tinder, very classic, got married on Zoom and actually bid on our house over Zoom as well. So like without the modern trappings of remote work, like we wouldn't be here. Yeah, that's something that I really cherish as a Zoom memory, and walking down the aisle and having my cats walk in front of me.
Knocking shit over the whole way like they do.
Meow, 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 meow.
One does the cake thing and, all of that for our camera focused on the cake, and unbeknownst to us, our cat sat on the cake while on camera, and like all of our guests are like, oh
wow.
Like in the black movie theaters, we go like, oh shit. Shit.
Exactly. The crowd was like, oh shit. And we just cut the tops off. It was fine. It was just us eating the cake. We felt okay about it. But it was fun, everyone watching but couldn't help them.
Wow.
You got your set on your wedding cake. What you gonna do now?
No, don't eat it. No, don't do that.
I'll be laughing about that for the rest of the day. I'm sorry.
It's great. The icing was a little messed, but it was good.
Yeah, right. So, Jennifer Dennard, thank you so much. Where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, so I am personally bad at Twitter, but I'm pretty decent at LinkedIn, which I don't know what that says about me as a person. I don't like to think about it too much. Look me up on LinkedIn, and then check out our website, range.co.
Okay.
And probably half the time, if you write into our team, you might get a response from me. We're still under 25 teams, so it's possible you'll hear from me directly. But if you get there and you're interested in empowering your teams and you think of yourself as a people first leader, reach out. We'd love to talk to you and help you get on board with Range.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Really, jokes aside, there was a lot of great information in this episode.
Absolutely.
I learned a lot. I'm going to learn some more. So thank you once again for coming by, and hopefully we get to meet someday in person. Who knows?
I might even send you my resume. I'm so enthused.
Awesome. See you.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet you.
Yes, nice to meet you all as well. I enjoyed it. Have a good rest of your day.
You as well. Take care. You've been listening to the Remotely We Are One podcast. Visit us at remotely1.com/podcast for upcoming episodes. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and download our episodes on your favorite podcast app.
Hey, don't forget to clock out.